Hey YouTube. So, I've been trying to figure out a way to put together a few thoughts on, I mean, it sounds general enough, but it's been on my mind for about 5 or 6 months, on the role of art in creating culture. Specifically, about modern culture and modern art and new media, such as the internet and YouTube and Twitter and blogs and so forth. I recently read a book by John David Ebert called The Age of Catastrophe, and this book kind of goes over a lot of the problems that we're facing right now as a global civilization with our technology and our materialism and so forth. And um, one of the big issues that actually came up for me in reading this, it jogged my memory, it jogged my thoughts on um, the importance of making art and making culture in our time. And there's no longer any kind of high art, so to speak. I mean, we have published authors, we have movies and so forth, but they're kind of meant for everybody. We have comic book, graphic novels, we have music, we have all of these different genres of art. And I don't know if anybody really discusses it in enough detail, but really what art does, it creates meaning out of our reality. It takes the neutrality of existence and makes something more out of it. It transmutes it into something more important and essential to life. It makes life worth living. Um, and as moderns, many of us don't have religion anymore, but art really takes place of religion. It takes place of ritual and myth. Um, for instance, in the past couple of months, I've watched a few documentaries on Star Wars and Star Trek, and the conventions where everybody comes and they dress up and they partake in these stories and they um, take on these roles. I mean, the substrata of that is so relatable to myth. Is so relatable to the ancient cults of Greece. And the ancient religions where everybody would come together and partake in a myth and dress up a certain way and enact a certain ritual and have a kind of ecstasy or meaning out of partaking in that. Um, and I think in our time, I think we've kind of resurrected that through, especially through the internet, in this kind of role-playing style of art where we take on these memes and play out these narratives and these roles in our conversations with each other. And the individuals who can, in a certain sense, do enough of the puppet string pulling and enact certain roles and myths and jokes, they're kind of at the top of the game. Um, and I just find that to be such an interesting turn of events that with electronic technology, things like movies create these like mystery cults around Star Wars and Star Trek and other films, and then otherwise we have these kind of paganistic retrievals of all of these memes and characters that we all portray in order to communicate with each other in a meaningful way online. So to say that art and mythos and mythology and storytelling is important for modern Western culture and for digital global culture as a whole is an understatement. I think it's at the heart of really what we're doing. Um, and I think this is important because we've sort of lost perspective, in my opinion. Um, you know, in my interview with Ebert that I'm going to be uploading soon on the other website, um, Evolutionary Landscapes. One of the things he mentions in the book and also in the interview is that the suburbs have created a kind of meaningless life. Everything is neutral. Everything is just about creating the white picket fence and the 9 to 5 job and raising the kids. But where's their meaning in it? I mean, besides us watching television and getting involved, like I said, in these movie cults, uh, the environment itself is hostile to meaning. And I certainly and sincerely do believe this, that as moderns living in a materialist culture, we've lost a sense of meaning and value and depth in our lives. I mean, one of the biggest critiques, of course, by the psychedelic community, and you can take this with a grain of salt or really have it speak to you, is that we are lacking as teenagers an initiation into adulthood. We're lacking a rite of passage. And even if you aren't a psychedelic enthusiast, you'll know from perhaps a reading of Joseph Campbell or other mythologists that coming of age is a very important and significant archetype or meaning. And the fact that we kind of have to self-initiate ourselves in the suburbs, and I can say that through experience, through, you know, whatever we have to do, whether it's joining like a group of friends or doing something or looking at pornography or taking drugs or whatnot, we have to kind of initiate ourselves into our own meaning-making cultures. In a kind of society that emphasizes being mechanical, that emphasizes the Protestant work ethic, and de-emphasizes value and meaning and art, that make us human. It's a horrible kind of experience to grow up as a teenager in these suburbs and have this kind of angst that gets no outlet. So I feel that as a modern culture in the digital age, we now have this wonderful opportunity to band together to create meaning and not just receive meaning through television and partake in, like, movie rituals and movie cults, so to speak, but to actually do something more with ourselves and with our lives through the creation of storytelling, through the creation of art and music and subgenres, and the ability to self-organize our own communities around these new artistic endeavors and around these new paradigms and philosophies. I think in this time we really have to see it as a responsibility to, in a sense, grow up and understand that we partake in our own creation of culture through our art, through our myth making together in these digital networks. And YouTube communities are a perfect example of that, but I don't want to limit this to being such an online sort of thing, although online is important. I think this can stem over into real life. There's so much that we can do. For instance, I was invited to speak at a graduate class about Marshall McLuhan just from uploading these videos, and my videos were discovered. So what I think the most important aspect of the new media age is art, and the meaning of meaning itself coming back to play in society and coming back into play in modern culture in a time when it's really needed. I mean, I gave the example of the suburbs, but really, I mean, we're in a crisis right now. And during any form of crisis, now the scholar that I'm speaking with, Ebert, and also many others like Marshall McLuhan, many academics, many scholars say this, but I think it's true. In that art kind of is an immune system of our planet, of our culture. It tells us what's up. It tells us what's coming next. It helps us reorient ourselves and diagnose problems. In a way, our collective art is like a collective myth or collective dream. Your dreams kind of tell you what's going on in your psychic life and in your private and public life. They tell you things are going on that you may not notice, you may not realize. They show you aspects of yourself you may have been bottling up and not exploring. But they also help you kind of diagnose what to do next. They may foreshadow something that is going to come up in the next day. They might help you assess the way you really feel about a relationship or about a friendship or even about a job. And they just do this because your unconscious is always working. It's always working and thinking, and the way it works and thinks is through images and dreams and stories and narratives, even if they're all jarbled up. So for me, art is a kind of collective mythology. It lets you tap right into the life force of a culture. So if you partake in art, you're partaking in the creation, the generation, and the preservation of human culture. And when it comes down to it, more so than the 9-to-5 job, more so than the academic literature or writing, and more so than really anything else, what will matter is the meaning of your life. And as you get older, I mean, I'm 25 going on to 26 now, but I can tell you from my older friends and also from my family and older folks that I know, I mean, meaning is very important. And some people will make meaning out of the 9-to-5, will make meaning out of the Protestant work ethic, and that is fine for them. But I think in our age, we really have to ask ourselves, how are we making meaning in life, and how can we kind of use these new technologies to enact a new culture? Because if you're like me, you might believe that our culture is in a desperate and drastic need of some kind of new way of thinking, and not just an ideology, but really a new lifestyle. So can we take our can we take the context of modern life and discover something new about it and enact it somehow in our literature, in our stories, in our narratives? And can those narratives actually inform us about our life? As an artist, very often, I mean, I used to write a lot of fiction and do drawing and poetry. I was much more of an artistic kid than anything else. Art teaches you things. It's a form of pedagogy, a kind of organic, self-teaching structure that the art itself will inform you about who you are, what the world is like, and what the world is doing. It's a teacher. So our myths, even if, as we create them, are also our teachers. Our art is also something that informs us about ourselves. So more important than ever in our society is art, and I hope that in communities like YouTube and digital communities where everybody is basically, what they're doing is creating meaning. They're in virtual worlds, they're online, they're in Photoshop, they're making films, they're making narratives and lectures like this. They're making meaning out of their life. I would hope that we can somehow be more self-conscious of that, and in my opinion, I think this is where the future is going to be created, in these kinds of dialogues and in this kind of myth-making. So artists out there, you keep doing what you're doing. I think you're the most important dimension of culture. And plus, as an academic as well, I mean, you give us, and I give myself, I guess, since I'm also a writer, something to write about. You give us something to analyze. But ultimately, it comes back to myth-making and world-making. And on a final kind of ontological or metaphysical note, I do believe that what we believe and what we believe to be reality, even if it is more practical or technical or social and historical, contextual, all those stuff that you hear, that in itself cannot be, you cannot escape myth and meaning even through that. Even through that, things will impress themselves upon you, even if you try to be objective. And you must try to be objective in academia. But even then, meaning bleeds through, and I think that's what you can take away from here. We bring forth art no matter no matter if we like it or not. So how can we be conscious creators in a kind of cheesy sense in this age of new media, as content creators, as media creators and producers, each of us ourselves? And here's my YouTube channel as a kind of contribution to that, but just the beginning, I hope. So yeah, thanks guys, thanks for listening.